All right, so today we're getting into something really personal. It's a story that brings up a super tough question. Where's that line between protecting your family's trauma and, well, deliberately shutting someone out? Wow. I mean, that first line just hits you, right? It tells you right away this isn't just a history lesson. We're about to get into those small, quiet, intimate moments that can completely change a family's dynamic forever. Okay, so before we get to that defining moment, we've got to rewind a bit. We need to understand the silent tensions that were already there, just simmering under the surface in this family for years. So, the matriarch of the family, she carries this incredibly heavy history. She and her family didn't just pack up and leave Iran during the revolution in the late 70s. No, they fled. And that kind of trauma, I mean, losing your home, your identity, that doesn't just go away, it sticks with you. It becomes this lens that shapes pretty much every relationship you have after that. And yeah, in this family, that history, it created this silent divide. The woman telling this story, she could just feel this invisible line drawn in the sand between her and her sister-in-law.
Look, the mother-in-law never came out and said, I don't like that my son married a white woman. It was never that direct. But the narrator, she felt it all the time. It was in the polite distance, the silences. But then you look at her brother-in-law's wife, who was Filipino, and she was welcomed with this real warmth. It's like, in the family's unwritten rules, she was considered close enough. But the narrator, she was always kept on the outside looking in.
So you've got all this tension just bubbling under the surface for years, right? And then one simple, totally innocent question at a family dinner brings it all to a boil. Just like that. So just picture it, a family dinner, the kind of get-together that's supposed to be all about connecting, bridging the gap between generations. And right in the middle of this dinner, the narrator's 15-year-old niece asks this really beautiful question. She turns to her grandmother and asks her to share her story, to talk about her roots, what life was like in Iran back then. I mean, this is it, right? This is the moment to pass down that crucial family history. But the answer she got, it wasn't about connection at all. It was the exact opposite. It was about creating a division. The mother-in-law looks right at the narrator, the storyteller, and says, I'm not telling that story with her here. Can you imagine? Just flat out. No trying to soften the blow, no explanation, just a hard, clear rejection. And the silence that fell over the room, the narrator says it wasn't just awkward, it was heavy. Like you could feel this weight of exclusion just settle over the whole table. It made it crystal clear that this wasn't an accident. This was on purpose. And that's the moment it clicked for the narrator. She realized, okay, this isn't just about her protecting a painful memory. This was an act of exclusion, plain and simple. It was a line in the sand, a declaration of who's in the inner circle and who is absolutely not.
So what do you do in that situation? It's an impossible choice, really. If she gets up and leaves, she's basically giving her mother-in-law exactly what she wants. But she's also, in a way, agreeing with the verdict that she doesn't belong. But staying, that means just sitting there and taking the pain, but it's also the only way she can stand her ground. So she stays. And if there was any doubt left in anyone's mind about what her mother-in-law meant by those words, well, what happened next completely erased it.
The whole thing becomes so deliberate, it's almost clinical. Dinner finally ends. The mother-in-law gets up. She takes the accepted daughter-in-law and her two granddaughters, leads them into the bedroom, and closes the door. That boundary, it's not unspoken anymore. Now it's a physical wall. Sometime later, they come out of the room and the nieces are in tears. You know the story has been told. That emotional, vital piece of family history has been passed down. But it was all done behind a closed door. It just cemented the narrator's place as a complete outsider. And later on, when the narrator tried to talk about it, to explain how humiliated and pushed out she felt, there was zero empathy. Instead, she gets told she's being dramatic, that she made it all about herself. So her feelings weren't just ignored, they were completely dismissed, just leaving her totally alone with that pain. So this whole gut-wrenching incident, it really forces us to step back and ask some really big, really difficult questions about what it even means to be part of a family. And this is really the core of the whole thing, isn't it? Was the mother-in-law just trying to protect herself from the pain of reliving her past in front of someone she didn't trust? Or was she using her trauma as a weapon, a way to control the family's boundaries and decide who's in and who's out?
And that brings us to the big question that just hangs in the air. I mean, it's her story, right? Her trauma. But when that personal story is also the family's history, who gets to be the gatekeeper? Who gets to decide who is worthy of hearing those deep truths? Who gets to stand at that threshold of belonging and say, you can come in, but you have to stay out?